Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Kari, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Happy to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
Let's jump straight into it. What got you into consulting, Kari, and especially at this intersection between psychology and organizations?
Yeah, so I'll probably have to tell you a little bit of a long story. I apologize in advance.
I love long stories. I love it.
So what I'll say is that when I was in university, I kind of accidentally got a job working at a computer lab at the YWCA. And it's notable in a way that it was accidental because I was surprised by all of the pieces that fell into place for my life. And I think probably a lot of people say that about their life paths. But while I was there, my job changed a lot over the years. And one of the things that I came to be responsible for was helping women who are leaving domestic violence situations find their next job. Doing that for several years, find a job for a woman, and I could help her write her resume. I could help her interview. We were teaching all those skills, and she would get the job. And then in a few months, she would be back in my computer lab asking for my help to find yet another job. And so I, having a brain that for whatever reason was shaped to see systems, started asking the question, what's going on here at a higher level? So the folks who were giving us grant funding said, well, there's something wrong with the candidate, right? So like maybe the woman wasn't right for the job, or I didn't do a very good job placing them, or we could do a better resume or a better interview or something like that. But in my mind, there was something larger happening. Simultaneously, the organization I was working at is a nonprofit, and I was watching my colleagues, the people who are working at this organization, also suffer. So they were often on food stamps, working a full-time job, and also struggling to make their own lives work. And so I'm seeing the system of work not work, essentially. And it struck me that we spend the majority of our waking lives working. And so even if I'm doing my very, very best, right, trying to help these women leaving domestic violence situations heal and thrive, if their work is recreating trauma, then they can never quite get out from underneath the cycle of violence that they're in. And what was happening was exactly that. Many of them were getting placed in their jobs. The jobs themselves were either toxic, or there was some sort of situation that triggered the trauma that they'd had, and then they would quit the job or they'd get fired and they'd come back. And like I said, that was happening with my colleagues as well. So this experience caused me to become completely obsessed with the health of systems and organizations. Before all of this, I thought that maybe I wanted to go into child counseling and family therapy. I was interested in the system of the family. But this broadened my world to say, actually, it's the world of work where we really could make a difference. Of course, both are important. And I'm so grateful that there are so many people working with children and families doing that. That is not my place anymore, but I'm so grateful that there are lots of people doing that. So that led me to go to graduate school. And so I sought a degree in clinical psychology, and my concentration was in organizational behavior. So I have a clinical psychology degree that's in, I'm a regular old shrink, just like, you would expect a normal therapist, but then my focus was on organizational behavior. And my dissertation was on the organizational aspects of self-care. So how do organizations actually promote healing rather than hurt? And so that was my course of study. I told you this is gonna be a long story, so I have just like one more chapter in this answering your question.
You're good, Kari. This is why I love podcasts. It's because it's long format. We're not on TikTok here, so you don't need to wrap it up in 30 seconds. So give us the. I know there is a thread to this, so give us the whole shebang, and then I'll probe where I want us to go.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to pull the thread home. So, when I was finishing my degree in clinical psychology, I met a venture capitalist. His name is Howie Diamond, and along with his partner Jake Chapman, they started a fund called Alpha Bridge Ventures. And Alpha Bridge Ventures, at this time, this was 2017, was a fund unlike any that I'd ever heard of. I hadn't heard of that many funds, to be honest, because I was like in, crunchy granola therapy world. I'm not yet in this shiny tech world. But even as I kind of got my feet wet in the tech world, I hadn't heard of very many funds at all that were at all thinking about mental health, at all thinking about organizational functioning, let alone what Howie and Jake were doing, which is actually investing fully, paying for the first year of coaching and consulting for the companies that they invested in. And so at that time, they asked me to come on to help them build out that program. Exactly how would we support our founders, right, in their organizational functioning and their leadership and their mental health? And so that was my charge, was to build that program and to answer that question. And so this is kind of like the coming home moment of this prolonged story, which is that I saw an opportunity to, especially with entrepreneurs, to merge the worlds of psychology, right, in my individual therapy mind and training with what I learned in organizational behavior. And I was really fortunate to be able to do that within this fund at that time. And the reason that I was really excited to do that with founders in particular is that founders of venture-backed startups are unique in the sense that they often are so personally invested in whatever they're building that their personal psychology becomes the organizational psychology of the business. And they're almost, especially at the beginning, inseparable. I like to say that if a founder wants to know what kind of family they grew up in, they could just look around their business, and whatever organizational structure they've created is mirroring back their family of origin to them. And so it's kind of the perfect application of my two skill sets, and a place where I think there's a huge impact to make, because the tech world creates a situation where people have to do something out of passion, and then they have to build really quickly. And so there's both a personal story and a story at scale. All right, I think that's the end of my answer to your first question.
The stage is set, ladies and gentlemen. I love this for us, Kari. So that's quite the origin story. I like it. It's funny because a lot of consultants get into consulting by accident, or it's like, who in their youth is like, oh yeah, I dream of becoming a consultant at some point. But I like how it was led by interest and what you wanted to have as an impact in the world that led to what you're doing right now. That's my 10 seconds takeaway, which is not doing credit to the breakdown. I like it. So tell us a bit more about the problem that you're solving now. What is it that you help those organizations achieve exactly?
Yeah, so I would say that my kind of original personal vision is still very much at play. So the eye that I always have out is trying to transform the place of work from a place of hurt to a place of healing. Now, if I come down a level, down to like, what are we actually doing, right? Like, what is the impact to the organizations that kind of ladders up to that personal vision that I hold? We say that we're helping create togetherness that works. One of my colleagues, Brandon, says always that humans are meant to be in groups. I mean, we just are, right? At a biological level, we have evolved to need a group to survive, right? We have tribes, we have families, we have societies. Right now, we're even a global community now, thanks to the internet and airplanes and all the things. And yet, we're very dysfunctional when we all get together. We just don't do that well. And part of it is I think we've forgotten how to be in groups in a really functional way. Some of it is that groups have gotten too big. Some of it is that we've tried to monetize being together, right? Companies. And that gets everything muddied, kind of beyond survival and social. It becomes a much muddier thing. So what our business really aims to do is to help people remember how to be together in a really functional way. And that's a kind of a boring thing to say. But if you can imagine that folks who are really good at being together have better strategic planning meetings, they're more aligned on their vision. They have better communication about the finances of the business, right? All of these things are actually based on the basic principles of togetherness. And so that's what we're really focused on, is how at the system level does the system become healthy so that the people within the system can be healthy contributors back into the business and the vision that the business is there to fulfill.
Amen to that. Do you have a specific industry, a specific niche, a specific job title, a specific whatever? Like who is it that you typically help with that, with communicating better, being better with each other? Like who do you work with?
Yeah, so I would say potentially anyone who finds themselves in a group is a potential client. If I could answer that question more specifically, we
Planet
tend,
Earth.
but I mean, really, sometimes we get a call. It was not too long ago. I got a call from a woman and she's trying to divide up her family's estate and she's having difficulty communicating with her siblings. We can totally work with that. Somebody who was running the hair dye department of Walmart, which there is a department fully just for hair dye at Walmart. That's how big Walmart is. We can work with that team, right? We can work with a startup. We can work with a Fortune 500 company. We can work with a commune. It kind of doesn't matter because our focus is actually on the relationships between people in a functional group that's trying to get something done. However, we have tended to work with small businesses, so either kind of mom and pop shops or venture-backed tech businesses. Those have been the areas that we're probably most experienced in. And I like to say that we're kind of your people if you're under 1,000 folks in the group. Over 1,000, we just need more reinforcements than we've got. So we're best equipped to work with kind of small and medium-sized businesses under 1,000 folks. And it's important also that they see togetherness as a part of their formula. So, if you'd rather just dictate orders to a group of people who can't leave you because the job market's terrible, we're probably not going to get very far together. But if leaders reach out to us who see the benefit of being in an organization, right, seeing that by doing something together, we can go further, faster, and with higher quality, then we're potentially good partners for those folks.
So I like to ask my curveball questions towards the end of the episode, once I've built a bit of rapport with my guest, Kari, but hopefully you won't mind this one, because I think it really talks to the positioning and the messaging. So is there any company out there who's going to tell you, oh no, we're not a group or a people's company, right? We don't really care. Like, is anybody going to do that? But on the flip side, when they say, oh yeah, we care about this, and you put a proposal of like, I don't want to assume, but I'm gonna guess 5, 6 figures, whatever. And they're like, okay, but how does that impact my bottom line? So on one hand, do you really find anyone who says, oh no, we don't care about this? But on the other hand, when they go like, yeah, we need to solve that, how big of a problem it is, and how do you tie this eventually to bottom line, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Okay. It's kind of a complex question. I feel like there's
You're welcome.
maybe appreciate it. So I feel like there's maybe 2 pieces that I could answer separately, and then weave them back together. One is kind of like, how do people come to us, right? So like, what story are they telling when we come to the moment where they either reach out or we get introduced or whatever happens. And oftentimes we have people who have been brought to us because there's something already breaking. So sure, they would say, we care about doing things together, right? That's usually people start businesses, although AI is changing that. And maybe we'll get to an opportunity to talk about that too, where people say, well, we actually just need more people in the room in order to solve the really big problem that we have in front of us. So most people say, yeah, that's what they're here to do. That's why we have a company. But by time we end up in conversation with them, I would say definitely better than 50% of the time, there's something wrong. And that helps the conversation, right? Of like, there's something here that we need to actually get into, which also helps solve the problem of the bottom line. Because and I'll talk about people who don't have a problem here in a second, but anyone who comes to us with a problem, the answer about the bottom line is, if you didn't solve this, what would it cost you? And if you could solve it, how does that change your bottom line? And if we think we're a good partner for solving it, then the math does itself. However, if there is not a problem, let me put it this way, there's always a problem. If there's not yet an identified problem, usually people come to us either because they've been referred by somebody, or oftentimes we'll have people who've built a business before and they've had problems in the past, and they're like, we're going to get out in front of those this time. Sometimes that math is a little harder to do, right? Because you're actually trying to solve for a future cost and saying, like, I'm going to prevent you from losing money in the following ways, but it can never be proven, of course, right? I'm trying to prove a negative. And that's when I think people have to really have a systems lens. And in my experience in my profession, and you probably see this all the time too, great leaders understand systems. They must, right? Because they're really important agents of a system. And if you understand a system, you understand that there's dysfunction in systems. And you also understand, just like if you have a complex, say, machine, and you get something that's grinding a gear in one place, that it doesn't just impact the gear that the thing is in, right? It impacts the entire thing. And so the ripple effect is huge. And so we like to talk with leaders who have that systems understanding. And it would be really hard for us to predict what the benefit to the bottom line might be. But a leader who's really aware of their organization and the gravity of the problem they're trying to solve, with a little bit of prompting, should be able to see what the ripple effects, both of a well-functioning system would be, right, on the positive, and to see the ripple effects of a dysfunctioning system. Did I answer all the parts of your question? Did I miss
Yeah,
something?
I like it. So that's, on one hand, is anybody really saying, hey, we don't care about that problem? I think we tackled that. And on the other hand is what I'm interested in conversing with people like you, Kari, on this particular topic is, how do we decommoditize the offer? How do we get people to get to a deeper level of problem awareness? The parallel I always draw is, someone makes $10 million a year. They want to sell their company. They go to market and they find out that their company is worth zero. Now, that's a big problem, but that's not the root cause of the problem. The root cause is, why is the company worth zero? And then when you find out, you understand that there is a key man risk. Like the day we remove the founder, the company doesn't make money. This is why it's worth zero. So the problem is the company is worth zero, but the root cause is we have a key man risk. And that's the thing that we need to solve. And getting people very educated on the root cause of the problem is a challenge in B2B coaching and consulting, especially in fields like yours. And I'd say there is even a deeper layer to this, which is, how do we tie this to bottom line? Like, okay, that's the root cause of this, and this is what it means for the business. And this is why we are here to solve it. I think you broke that down pretty well.
You know, maybe just another thing that came up as you were talking is that we often get served individual problems that are actually symptoms, right, of the system problem. It seems very much easier. And we work a lot in the United States and Canada, where it's kind of the individualistic culture seems to be the driver of problem focus. And so oftentimes we'll get, like, say, a 360 evaluation contract. And they'll say, we want to evaluate all of our leaders, but really we're evaluating all of our leaders because we think one or two of them are a problem. And we can't just evaluate them because then they'll know and it's weird and we can't be honest about stuff. So we have to evaluate all of our leaders. Will you do that? And then at the end, will you give us a recommendation basically to give us the foundation to get rid of these people? Right? That's I'm saying the subtext. People don't actually tell us this, right? We have to intuit it. But what we've started doing, for example, in supporting our clients who come to us with an individual, like an identified patient, is what we would call it in psychology, is we then will also provide them a systems report back to them. So after we've done, say, 16 360 evaluations, we take what are the common themes from all of those leaders, and then we'll reflect that back as sort of a cultural and systems report on what's happening. And our entire goal of doing that is to help them increase their ability to identify the root causes. So sure, we're going to deliver the 360s. Sure, it's going to help all of your leaders develop in the ways that they need to and become better leaders. That's great. But our assertion is that individual performance alone can't make the system thrive. And so even if we have all of those 16 leaders in their optimal performance, if there's some sort of commonality in here that we identify as a systems or a culture issue, then we need to, as a group, learn to identify that, sense it, and then address it together as a group, hopefully quicker and quicker, right, as we continue to direct their eyes to those sorts of things. But that's something that we've been doing in the last few years just to try and help our clients shortcut a little bit, right? Get a sense of that root cause. Even if they're asking kind of the wrong question up front, we try to help them answer the right question by the end.
Amen to that. So tell me more about this. How do you educate? How do you market? How do you brand? How do you lead all this and this positioning, Kari, to people knocking on the door and being like, hey, this might be for us, to a conversation, to an SOW? Like what do marketing and sales look like for you guys?
Yeah, I'm going to answer this question in a complex way. Now that you are knowing me a little bit, you'll know that this is just how I do things, I guess. We have tried a lot of different things in terms of storytelling and getting out there what it is that we do. Back in the pre-COVID world, I was doing a lot of conferences and speaking and different things like that. And I liked that format of a way to educate potential clients, because it kind of like this, it could be a long form discussion and people could bring cases and start to learn how we might support their organization through the lens of other organizations. I felt like that was a really effective way to start shifting the narrative. I don't think of us as a typical consulting firm. Sometimes they even call us systems healers, right? So we're just like really truly at the intersection of consulting and psychology. Really, we're not a off the rack consulting firm, but we're also not just a coaching firm or a therapy practice. It's like really a mix of all of those things. And so we really feel like we have to educate people on what that is and how they could imagine utilizing us. Post-COVID, we tried all sorts of things like writing on LinkedIn and social media ads and all of these sorts of things. And we were humbled in our efforts there in realizing that this is a relationship-based business. It's also a category that's still not well known. At least the way that we approach our work is still quite unique and not something that people are Googling. And so we have continued to really educate through our clients, through long form conversations, and through our relationship web. We have a few really fantastic partnerships that have proven to be great places for us to educate people about what healthy systems can do, and have also proved to be really great lead generation for us as well.
We are in the relationship-based selling business. That's and I shouldn't even call it selling. I think it's partnering up.
Yeah,
I don't see anybody. I mean, I'm yet to see anyone signing again 5, 6, 7-figure deals without having to talk to a decision maker, without building that trust, that authority, and that relationship before getting into the okay, we rock and roll together.
We call ourselves long-term relationship people, in that
Makes sense.
sometimes we know the founder of a company for 5, 6, 7 years before we do a big engagement with them. And that for us is considered normal, right? We're not saying that that's a failure or a lost sale or anything like that. We will take a conversation with anybody and we don't know where it'll go. And, maybe this is true of other folks that you've interviewed for the podcast, but it's certainly true for us that we're so incredibly vision and mission driven that even if our conversations never lead to a sale, we still consider that a success, because we think that this is so important, people to have this tool set and just awareness, right, of what it means to be together and doing something that's important in the world.
I like the way you roll, Kari, which is why now I'm going to ask you the real curveball question. Tell me a bit more about your number one challenge right now. What is that, that one nut that you're trying to crack, that once you crack, you're going to take the whole thing to the next level? What would that be for you?
Yeah, I think for us, it's about a product that we're trying to launch. I don't even know, a service, I guess, that we're trying to launch. And it's based on something that we believe will be very necessary in the future. And I would say that we haven't found product market fit with it. And it's becoming, I would say, frustrating for us as a group, and also maybe even concerning to us as a group, in like, that we really think that this is the sort of work that people need to be doing, is the sort of work that we want to be doing with people. And we think that it's going to be really important as the future continues to sprint at us. But we're having trouble finding people to sign on. So maybe some folks who are listening here could give me some consultation later on what we're doing wrong that's making this not land. But the quick blurb is, as people are using more and more AI in their businesses, we're seeing teams become smaller. In fact, mostly now companies are just, say, a team of leaders who are deploying orders to agents, AI agents in their businesses. And that's great efficiency. I think there's a huge transition that's happening in the workforce, which is going to impact a lot of people negatively. And there's a lot going on there. But if we even look beyond that, right, and we say, okay, if AI agents are here to stay, this is the way that businesses are going to be run. We believe that that group of human beings who are deploying the orders need to be even better than people need to be in business now at being aligned, making decisions, future casting, being aligned on their vision, all of those things that we kind of run through a messy human system now. And the messy human system actually catches a lot of mistakes. It catches misalignments. It gives a lot of opportunities for people to push back and get upset and leave the group and come back into the group and refine the idea. And we call that inefficiency, but it's actually sort of brilliant. In like, if you were going to put a precious, semi-precious stone in a rock tumbler to polish the outside, like the longer it's in there and the more grit that's in there, the shinier the surface is. As we remove that friction by adding AI agents who just kind of do what you tell them to do, we might miss out on the opportunity of a really well-polished rock, to use that analogy. And so we believe that the inputs into the system have to be so much more impeccable than they are now. And so we've been trying to enroll some people in what we're calling tuning offsites. So tuning your team to a much subtler level of precision before you start to deploy your agents out into against whatever vision or project that you're on. And we think we're talking to the people at the right time, and we're not somehow. It is like crickets around that. It's like people still want to talk to us about like their boss who's an asshole, but not interested in this. And that's a challenge that came to mind for me.
And it does make a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing this, Kari. I think this is, obviously this is something that a lot of consultants listening to us will be struggling with as well. The reason I like this question is people listening to us, some of them will have the same problem. And it's always interesting to see how your peers, the ones actually walking the talk, are thinking about this challenge and potentially solving it. So thanks a lot for sharing it.
Yeah.
Tell us more about you. If people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
Yeah, so folks can always email me. It's just my name, Kari, at thehwc.com. That's the heartwoodcollective.com. And we also have a website, thehwc.com. And those are great places to get in touch. And if folks are ever passing through Seattle, shoot me a note and we'll have a coffee on a rainy Tuesday, or with good luck, maybe it's a sunny day. Always happy to be in conversations, especially about the future of our field and how we can continue to evolve ourselves to better meet the moment that's coming next.
We will put all the links in the description. I can say one thing for sure. So LinkedIn as well, right, Kari?
Yes, of course.
Sulenes. We'll put all the links in the description. I can say one thing for sure is that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview. Me, I just added you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you. I appreciated all your questions.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.